Hey everybody, welcome to another Tanks replay, and this one's on Fiery Salient, sent in by Competency. He's playing in the Easy 8, top tier, in a tier 6 match. Always a good setup for this tank. And this is going to be a pretty standard central play, straight for the middle of the map, spotting and shooting from F6. Teams are pretty standard fare for what you get in low tiers. A bit of the old rainbow skittles. Now, Competency is using some kind of reticle mod. I'm not sure what it is, but in my game client, because I don't have it, it blows out the size of the aim bloom to its maximum extent, and it doesn't shrink even once the tank's aimed in. So you're just going to have to use your imagination, because I don't actually know what's causing it, or if there's any way of fixing it without installing the mod myself. Obviously though, the aim bloom on the Easy 8 is not this bad. Now right away he makes a very good point to his teammates, which is that half the team can't be sitting around doing nothing. If you're going to have a lot of tank destroyers on the one line, they need to actually push up. Otherwise, all they're doing really is just being dead weight. Gets a quick kill on the Crusader there. Now the Crusader pushed way too far up on top of the hill. He should have stayed on the reverse slope, not actually crested it and sat on the flat top area. It's way too exposed, even for a medium tank, let alone a light tank. And he went down accordingly. The enemy team now begin climbing the hill, giving Competency plenty of easy shots into their sides, but at this low tier, you can see the enormous difference in shell velocity between the Easy 8, which has for its tier a very high velocity gun, and the tier 10 mediums I'm usually playing. Often in my tier 10 mediums I can just auto-aim these guys, and as they drive, the shell gets there so fast that I don't need to lead them. That won't work in an Easy 8. Certainly not from this distance. Now, while the Easy 8 might not do a whole lot of damage per shot, typical of tier 6 mediums, it can fire very quickly, and with reasonably good accuracy for its tier. It's also got relatively high pen for a tier 6 medium, and this makes it quite good at these kind of engagements. Also worth note, the Easy 8 has fairly good on the move accuracy, again for a tier 6. It's just a general all-round good tank. And this follows actually the Americans' real design philosophy of generalized equipment that does everything well enough, but isn't necessarily specialized in any real degree. This is of course a philosophy born out of the necessity of being able to mass produce such things, have a very large army use them without too much excessive training, and also the ability to have them work pretty much anywhere in the world. Competency is already sitting on 1600 damage, which is a good game for a tier 6 medium. And with the middle of the map cleared out, he's able to refocus his attention on the enemy 3001H, who foolishly tried to climb up the hill after all his teammates were killed doing the exact same thing.
Enemy armor is damaged.
However, the SU-100Y on the western flank is really beginning to chew through those tanks on the one line. Not only that, but it's supported by an AT-8, which is very difficult for tier 6s to pen. And the enemy KV-85 has not yet been spotted, which would strongly suggest it's sitting up in A1 or A2, alongside the SU-100Y, which makes that corner of the map very dangerous, And of course they can see and fire all the way out to roughly where Competency is now. He's inside their render range. So he has to be very careful. T-25 takes out the T-34 by Competency. He was lit there and shot by, I believe that would have been the AT-8 or the KV-85. The Archer finally takes down the AT-8. But now Competency still has the enemy T-25 directly in front of him, which will spot him if he crests the hill. And, of course, he's got those two very big guns to his northwest. The friendly M5 Stuart is messing around in the village. There's no enemy tanks left on that side of the rails. I don't know why he's still there. But Competency's going to have to wait for him to come and spot. At this point in the match, every single tank left on Competency's team is now one-shottable for the Su-100Y. And in fact, they can be one-shot by high rolls from the KV-85 as well, if he's using the 100mm gun, or they can be one-shot by average rolls if he's using the 122. And so this has got to be played very carefully. Luckily for Competency, he's able to get up close to the T-25. It bounces its first shot, misses its second, and doesn't get a third. Does take a hit there from his left though. Probably, well, almost certainly in fact from the KV-85. If that was an Su-100Y shell, it would have killed him. Thankfully, when the Su-100Y shell does come, it only tracks him for no damage, and he's able to get into this depression here and use it to cover himself. The Stuart finally gets a move on. Right as the KV-85 takes out the Su-85, which is the most powerful gun left on Competency's team, or rather was. That title is now conferred upon the Archer. And of course, the Stuart's gun isn't going to be much use in this engagement, and it is a light tank, so it maintains camo on the move. It's also fast and manoeuvrable, so there's really nothing else here to do but wait for the Stuart to actually move up and start spotting. The Archer can't afford to be killed, as it has a gun which is crucial for this fight. And so as the Stuart moves into the cap to try and draw the enemy out, Competency moves up behind this rock and gets ready to take a shot at whatever reveals itself first, which turns out to be the Su-100Y.
Penetration.
It fires at the Stuart, misses,
Enemy armor is damaged.
and it's then screwed
Penetration.
as Competency and the Archer take it apart.
Enemy armor is
The Stuart
destroyed.
does go down to the KV-85, but now it's only him left, and Competency can wait for the Archer to move up and spot it. Now the other thing I should note is the Easy-8 actually has pretty decent view range, but in this situation where Competency is only sitting on 11 hit points, he can't afford to spot his own target, and so he has to wait for the Archer to move up. He's now sitting on 3,000 damage, which is a fantastic game in a tier 6 medium. And sure enough, out pops the KV, misses its shot, and goes down to the Archer. And that is about as good as a game as you are likely to see in a tier 6 medium tank. This map is really, really good for the Easy-8 because you can use that central position to control the center of the map basically, as well as the hill to the east of the map, and to some degree the western road. The Easy-8 is one of the better tier 6s, it's just a good all-round tank. Really its only disadvantage, aside from the lack of armor which is common to medium tanks, is the fact that it is so tall. Shermans are very tall tanks. If you look at photos of them from World War II parked next to destroyed King Tigers or Panthers in the Ardennes, they're enormous. So that's really the only thing you've got working against you, but a lot of the other Tier 6 mediums aren't exactly small themselves. T-34-85, of course, has that big 3-man turret for the 85mm gun, making it quite a bit larger than the original T-34. The Type 58 is the same thing pretty much. The VK3002M, the Panther prototype, is obviously quite large. And so, really the only small, sort of low-profile Tier 6 medium is the Cromwell. But the Cromwell trades other things for that. For example, it can't fire on the move worth a damn. So the other interesting thing about the EZ8, and one of the things that makes it so good at firing on the move for its tier, is the fact that it can actually mount a vertical stabilizer at tier 6. This is a special thing the Americans get that nobody else does. The Americans get V-stabs at tier 6, the British get them at tier 7, and the Germans and Soviets get them at tier 8. I believe the Chinese get them at tier 8 as well. As for the Japanese, again, tier 8 I think, I'm pretty sure. The reason that the British and Americans get them early is obviously because the British and Americans did actually have working vertical stabilizers in their tanks in World War II, although they weren't often used due to lack of training and poor maintenance, and a general sort of distrust of the equipment. The Germans experimented with other methods of stabilization. Obviously, the very long barrels of Panthers and Tigers did not lend themselves very well to the rather early gyro stabilization systems. You know, they had teething issues even with the short-barreled guns the Allies used, so you can imagine trying to stabilize a Panther's gun with it. So instead of trying to stabilize the gun itself, the Germans worked on stabilizing the entire tank by having a very good flotation on the suspension. You can see this in the Panther. If you've ever seen video clips of a Panther running over corrugated road at a good speed, it's almost flat, it barely moves. This wasn't so much to enable firing on the move as to reduce the eye strain on the gunner. Obviously, if you're watching the ground bouncing around through a magnified scope, it messes with you quite badly. In the end, though, they did try some experiments with coincidence firing, where the gun would electrically fire once a circuit was completed when the sight and the gun were pointing in the same place, and they also used stabilized sights for that experiment. So the actual gun sight would be stabilized, the tank would be about as stabilized as you can get working off the suspension, and then the actual gun itself would still be bouncing around, but it would not fire until it was pointing the exact same direction as the gun sight. Although you probably would still get a bit of dispersion out of that because of the momentum of the gun. One of the more important things when you're actually trying to shoot accurately is not to move the actual gun as you're firing. Obviously, that will mess you up, and so I could imagine even with a coincidence firing system, if the gun's still bouncing around, it probably wouldn't be very accurate. So the Germans never really got a workable system until after the war. The Soviets, I'm not actually sure when they... I think their first single-plane stabilizer would have been around the time the T-44 came out. I know that the Lee often was equipped with it, and I know the Soviets got quite a few Lees off Lend-Lease, so they probably pulled something out of that. But they didn't get a proper stabilizer in the single-plane system until, I think, the T-44, or one of the T-44 modernizations. And then when the T-54 and T-55 came about, after a little while, they developed a two-plane stabilizer system, which means that not only does the gun hold steady in the vertical plane, it doesn't bounce up and down as you go over terrain, it also means that the turret will remain facing the same direction as the tank turns underneath it. The British actually came out with this first on Centurion, and if you actually look, I might link it in the description, there's archive footage of the Centurion being tried out with the new two-plane stabilizer. It's quite impressive, and it displays a phenomenal rate of fire, which I wish they'd give the Centurion in-game. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as ever, I'll see you on the next one.